If the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would have only 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man. This famous quote precisely summarizes the importance of the small insect. Bees play such an important role in our ecosystem. 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat depends on pollination directly or indirectly. So if these hardworking pollinators were to disappear, many of our favorite foods like apples, almonds, strawberries and tomatoes would be greatly affected. Hello everyone, my name is Devaki Shinkre. I'm a software engineer by education, a YouTuber promoting sustainable lifestyle by passion, and also a novice beekeeper. And today I'm going to talk to you about the fascinating art of beekeeping. Beekeeping is the art of rearing honeybees. I've noticed that there is not much awareness around beekeeping. First of all, there's a lot of fear around this topic because people associate bees with sting injury. But let me assure you, there are proper safety measures to be taken. Like you can wear a full sleeves jacket, there are rubber gloves to cover your hands completely. You can wear full trousers and there's also a hat with a veil. So it is literally impossible for a bee to sting. Plus, did you know when a honeybee actually stings you, it dies in the process. This is because a bee's stinger is structured in such a way that when a bee punctures the human skin, the bee cannot take out its stinger without dying. As the honeybee tries to pull out its stinger, it ends up rupturing its own abdomen. So you should realize that stinging a human being is the very last thing that a honeybee is actually going to do. So now that we have burst some basic myths around honeybees, let me directly take you to some advantages of beekeeping. Number 1, beekeeping does not require much space unlike agriculture. You can imagine how much space is it going to really take to keep one bee box. You do not need acres of farmland, so it's very cost effective. Number 2, unlike other farm animals such as cattle or chicken, you do not need to monitor your bees on a daily basis. That is because bees are self-sufficient and they forage for their own food. Number 3, if you are a farmer who's already growing some vegetables on your farm, then you must consider keeping a bee box because a bee box can help you increase your yield substantially as bees are excellent pollinators. Number 4, besides honey, other beehive products such as pollen, propolis, beeswax or royal jelly can also help generate income to the beekeepers. Another very important thing that I would like to mention here is that our government is trying to promote beekeeping as an important economic activity. My bees box along with a bee colony cost me 6,500 rupees. And in order to avail the subsidies, you need to contact your local zonal agriculture office in your area. Okay, so now let me tell you a little about what this bees box contains. A bee box is made up of different sections. There is a bottom board, it has a family room, a super chamber, frames, 7 frames in this case, a top cover and a bee spacer. Now let me talk a little about the different kind of honeybees. Number 1, Indian bees or Apis cerana indica are one of the locally found honeybees in the Indian subcontinent. They are also called as Satode moose in the Konkani language. because when they are found in nature, they create 7 to 8 beehives in semi-dark cavities. So the Indian bees produce about 5 to 10 kg of honey per honeycomb in a year. Number 2, rock bees or Apis dorsata. These are those large bees that you find making beehives in tall buildings or in tall trees. Apis dorsata bees are much larger in size than Apis cerana indica, and hence they also produce much more amount of honey. You can harvest 35 to 50 kg of honey per honeycomb in a year from a rock bee hive. But the problem is rock bees cannot be domesticated as they are very aggressive. In Konkani, we call them as konge. Number 3, stingless bees. As the name suggests, these bees do not sting, and they are even smaller in size than the Indian bees, and hence their production of honey is much lesser. From one beehive of a stingless bee, you can harvest only about 250 to 500 grams of honey in a year, and this honey has a lot of medicinal use, and the honey is also very expensive. But one thing you need to remember is that it's very difficult to go commercial if you plan to bring stingless bees home. You can of course have these stingless bees and use the honey for your own home purpose, but in order to go commercial, you would need much more production. Stingless bees are known as Polyache moose in Konkani. Number 4, Apis mellifera or European bees. Now these are bees which are believed to have originated in Italy, Europe, and later introduced to different countries worldwide. In India, you will find beekeepers mostly in northern India where the climate is much cooler, rearing such Apis mellifera bees. You can harvest about 35 kg of honey per comb in a year from such bees. Now the bees that we decided to bring home are the Indian bees. Now let us talk a little about a bee colony, because a bee box is going to house thousands of these small insects inside a bee colony, and it is quite fascinating to understand how all these bees are organized inside a bee colony. A bee colony comprises of bees which live in hexagonal wax cells and is composed of one queen, drones and worker bees. Number 1, queen bee. In a bee colony, only one queen bee can live at a time. Queen bee is the mother of the entire bee colony, and it has total control over the bee colony. The main job of a queen bee is to lay eggs, and depending on the season, it controls the population of the bee colony. On an average, a queen bee can lay about 500 to 1500 eggs per day, and it takes about 15 to 16 days for a queen bee to form from an egg stage. A queen bee is always larger than a worker bee, longer than a drone bee, and it has a long tapering abdomen. A queen bee can live for about 4 to 5 years. Number 2, drones. Drones are larger, fatter than a queen bee. Drones are raised from unfertilized eggs, and they are the only males in a colony. Their numbers vary, and there can be around 0 to 1000 drones in an average bee colony. Drones do not have pollen baskets, nor do they have any wax glands. They do not even have a sting to defend. It takes about 24 days for a drone to form from an egg stage. Drones do not do any work inside a bee colony, and they only mate with the queen and they die. Number 3, worker bees. Worker bees are smaller in size than drone or queen bee. A bee colony has about 5,000 to 7,500 of worker bees. Worker bees are the imperfectly developed female bees from fertilized eggs. Based on their age, worker bees are assigned duties. They do hive work, field work, they collect pollen, nectar. They also nurture the young ones. They maintain the temperature inside the beehive. They also dispose the dead bees and so on. Worker bees live for about 6 weeks, and they are equipped with pollen baskets as well as wax glands, and they also have a sting to defend. As a novice beekeeper who has just recently got started with beekeeping, let me tell you, I am no expert at beekeeping. In fact, I'm learning every day and I have made some mistakes in this journey, but I'm only learning through my mistakes so that I can improve my understanding of these amazing creatures. So this is what I feel. Interested parties must enroll themselves for an introductory course on beekeeping. Such courses are regularly conducted at ICAR, Central Agricultural Research Institute. We have two of these, one in North Goa and South Goa. So depending on which district you come under, you can get in touch with the ICAR. Zonal Agriculture Office of your local area also conducts such introductory courses. It is impossible to learn everything about beekeeping by attending just one course, but beekeeping is a very practical activity. So these introductory courses help you with the theoretical knowledge, and then you can go ahead and get yourself a bee box with a bee colony and learn the finer things in a practical manner. Now there are a few things that you need to ensure before you decide to bring that bee box at home. You must survey your area to find if you have the trees and the flowering plants which are required for the bees. Bees require both pollen and nectar in order to survive. Teak, areca nut, neem and sugarcane are all good sources of nectar. Coconut, onion, champak, sorghum, paddy and ragi are all sources of pollen. Trees such as jamun, tamarind, orange, lime, drumstick, eucalyptus, coffee, banana, cardamom, horsecrane and mustard are all sources of both pollen as well as nectar. So if you have identified all these flora and fauna in your area, then you can just go ahead and get yourself a bee box with the bee colony. Where should you keep the bee box? The place should be cool and preferably dark, because bees tend to get attracted to bright light sources, especially in the night, such as tube lights or bulbs. Bees are also solitary creatures, so they do not like areas which have too much noise or smoke. So you should not have a bee box near a factory area or just outside a kitchen area. Also make sure you choose an area which is preferably on the ground floor and there is nothing obstructing the flight path of the bees. Also, you need to protect your bees from direct rains and strong wind. So we have kept our bee box inside our balcony, but if you want to keep it outside, then you can either choose to keep it under the shade of a larger tree, and during the monsoons you should cover it with a plastic cover to make sure that no excess water gets inside the colony. Also, foraging for food gets difficult during the monsoon season. So as responsible beekeepers, we need to inspect our bee boxes and even provide a sugar syrup feeding from time to time to make sure that the bees are fine and that they are not starving for their food. You should also make sure to protect your bees from certain enemies. Moths, ants, yellow hornets and wasps are some of the common enemies of bees. So we always apply some grease on the metal stand on which we keep the bee box, so that all these things cannot really enter the bee's box. You should also maintain cleanliness around the area where this bee box is installed so that larger pests such as rats or frogs do not cause any harm. When is the right time to get a bee box? October, November, the season just after the monsoons are over, is the best time to get into beekeeping. Different trees have their own seasons to flower. For example, between October to December is when Sopna tree flowers. In February, bees can get nectar from jamun trees. Bees can get pollen from coconut and areca nut trees almost all year round. Now, effective range of a honeybee is about 300 to 400 meters, but sometimes bees can even travel up to a kilometer in order to forage for food. When is honey harvested? Generally, honey is harvested at the end of a flowering season. Traditionally, the hives are puffed with smoke so that the honeybees fly away. Then the combs are removed and squeezed to extract honey. We do not kill honeybees in this process, and we make use of the same bee colony in the future. Conclusion: Government is promoting beekeeping as part of its aim to double the farmers' income. The government has allocated 500 crores towards beekeeping under the Atmanirbhar Abhiyan. National Bee Board has created 4 modules to impart training as part of the National Beekeeping and Honey Mission (NBHM), and 30 lakh farmers have been trained in beekeeping. They are also being financially supported by the government. The government has launched Honey Mission as part of Sweet Revolution, and India is among the world's top 5 honey producers. So what needs to be done? Number 1, expand the scope. Beekeeping cannot be restricted to honey and wax only. Products such as pollen, royal jelly, bee venom, propolis are also marketable, and they can provide a good income to the Indian farmers. Number 2, increase in area. Based on the area under cultivation in India and the bee forage crops, India has a potential of about 200 million bee colonies against 3.4 million bee colonies today. Increasing the number of bee colonies will not only increase the production of bee related products, but it will also boost the overall agricultural and horticultural productivity. To conclude, I would just like to say that with a good amount of training and support, beekeeping can become a lucrative economic activity, especially for the rural women who are already blessed with the flora and fauna in their area. This is a field which still needs to be explored. Finally, here are some contact details for training and if you wish to purchase the bee box. Thank you very much for your time and for listening to me. This is Devaki signing off. Bye-bye.